We often think about big companies just in terms of, what they sell, their products, their services.
Sure, the end result.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But what if we try to go a bit deeper? Understand their wider impact, where they're headed.
that sounds interesting.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing today on the deep dive. We're focusing on Tata Power, using their presentation from May 14th, 2025 as our guide.
Ah, okay. And that presentation, it gives us quite a bit to work with, I imagine.
It does. It gives a pretty good look under the hood. You
Well,
get financials, their ESG efforts, that's environmental, social, governance,
right, ESG. Everyone's talking about that now.
definitely. Plus how they're working with communities and, importantly, their future plans, their projects.
So a broad picture then.
Precisely. So our goal here isn't just to talk about power plants and EV chargers, although we will.
Uh-huh.
We really want to pull out the key insights, maybe find some surprising things about Tata Power's wider influence and, well, what they're planning for the next few years.
Okay, sounds good. Where should we start? The money side.
Yeah, let's jump right into the financial story. What are the numbers telling us?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that kind of jumps out from the presentation is this consistent upward trend.
In their performance.
Yeah, their financial performance over the last, 4 or 5 years, FY20 right through to FY24.
Okay.
It's a pretty steady climb, probably reflects, higher demand, but also their move into new areas, renewables, EV charging. We can touch on those later, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. So let's put some figures on that growth. The revenue, for instance.
Right. So back in FY20, they were at 28,948 crore.
Right.
Then it climbed 33,239 crore in FY21.
Got it.
Then quite a big jump in FY22, up to 42,576 crore.
Wow, yeah.
And it kept going. FY23 saw 56,033 crore, and then FY24 hit 61,542 crore.
So significant year-on-year increases. And they expect that to continue.
Seems like it. The projection for FY25 is around 64,502 crore. So yeah, the growth path looks pretty clear there.
That's quite a trajectory. And what about profitability measures like EBITDA?
Similar story, really. EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Basically core profit.
Right.
That went from 1,316 crore in FY20 way up to 4,280 crore in FY24.
Huge jump.
It is. And the forecast for FY25 is higher again at 4,775 crore.
And is that the same for the underlying EBITDA? Sometimes that gives a clearer picture without one-offs.
Good point. Yes, the underlying figure also shows a really strong increase. It went from 9,269 crore back in FY20
Okay.
to 13,878 crore in FY24. And the projection for FY25 is 14,468 crore.
So across the board, profitability looking pretty healthy then?
Generally, yes. Though there's an interesting little point on the net profit after tax, the pay figures.
Oh, what's that?
Well, just for the last quarter, Q4 of FY25, the payat was 409 crore,
Right.
which is actually lower than the same quarter the year before that was 846 crore.
Huh. Any reason given?
The presentation mentions lower dividend income from ITPC, partially offset by an insurance claim.
Ah, okay. So some specific factors in that quarter.
Yeah.
But the full year picture was still positive.
Yes, exactly. For the full fiscal year 25, PAPI was 3,133 crore, which is up from 2,230 crore in FY24.
Right. So the overall annual trend is still up despite that quarterly dip. It shows how different things can influence results, even with overall growth.
Absolutely. It's never just one straight line.
Okay. So the financials look, pretty robust overall. Let's maybe shift gears now to something else that's getting a lot of attention, ESG.
Yeah, environmental, social, and governance. Crucial these days. And Tata Power definitely emphasizes their commitment here.
So what are the rating agencies saying? The presentation mentions a few.
It does. They show ratings from CDP, which looks at climate change and water. They've held a B rating for 2023, 2024, and they expect the same for 2025.
Okay. Consistent there. What about others, like S&P?
Yeah, S&P's CSA score, that's for the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, the emerging markets lists, it's improved. It was 67 in 2023.
Uh-huh.
The target is 68 in 2025, but they've set a much more ambitious goal of 80 by 2027.
80. That's a big jump. Really signals they're pushing hard on sustainability.
It does suggest that. And then there's MSCI, another big one. They've given Tata Power an A rating consistently 2023, 24, and 25.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Indicates strong management of ESG risks.
Generally, yes. And then Sustainalytics, which looks at ESG risk levels, their score has actually decreased slightly.
Decrease. Is that good or bad?
With Sustainalytics, lower is better. It means lower unmanaged risk. So it went from 38.5 in 2023 to a projected 37.5 in 2025. So that's also an improvement.
Ah, right. Lower is better. It's interesting how the different agencies have slightly different takes or scores.
It is. They all have their own methodologies, focus areas. It gives you a more rounded picture, I think.
Makes sense. So beyond the ratings, did they talk about specific environmental actions? Biodiversity, perhaps?
Yes, quite a bit, actually. It was pretty detailed. They highlighted having operations across 5 different ecosystems.
5, okay.
And importantly, having biodiversity action plans, BAPs, for all their sites.
All sites. That's comprehensive.
Seems like it. They also mentioned completing a pilot program with the TNFD.
TNFD Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures.
That's the one. It's about getting companies to report on nature-related risks and opportunities. So doing a pilot suggests they're trying to be ahead of the curve.
And I saw something about no net loss for biodiversity.
Yes. That really stood out. A commitment to achieve no net loss at, I think it was 60 solar and 22 wind sites.
That's quite specific. And they're partnering with groups like the IUCN.
Yeah, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Partnering with credible organizations like that adds weight to their efforts, definitely.
It really sounds like they're trying to go beyond just, minimizing harm and actually contribute positively to conservation.
That's the impression, yes. Actively conserving, maybe even enhancing biodiversity.
Okay, so strong on the E in ESG. What about the S, the social side? How are they engaging with communities, CSR initiatives?
Right. Corporate social responsibility. Their mission is stated pretty clearly. Address key development needs in the areas around their operations and other identified regions.
Sounds like a good goal. Do they have specific focus areas or targets?
They do. Employability and employment is a big one. They're aiming to benefit 300,000 people in 2025.
300,000. That's a lot.
And the target goes up to 376,000 by 2028. Plus, an entrepreneurship program aiming for 40,000 beneficiaries in 2025. So, focusing on economic opportunities.
That makes sense. And what about within the company itself? Diversity?
Yeah, gender diversity is highlighted. They've got a goal of 20% women employees by 2028.
20%. Do they show where they are now?
They give some current percentages for campus hires, finance roles, digital tech. It gives a baseline to track progress.
Okay. Any specific CSR programs that stood out?
Well, the Pay Attention initiative seemed particularly interesting. It's focused on neurodiversity support.
Neurodiversity. How does it work?
They've developed what they call a bridgetal network, bridging physical and digital. It includes a toll-free helpline, a resource directory they call the Purple Directory, and an online platform called eSanita. Yeah, it seems to be a key part. They mention it's already reached 18,000 families and caregivers across several states. It sounds like quite a comprehensive support system.
That does sound innovative. And are they working with others on this?
Yes, collaborations with NIEPD, that's the National Institute for Empowerment of Persons with Intellectual Disabilities, and also Tata Elxsi for the tech side.
So bringing in specialist partners. Makes sense.
Definitely. And beyond that one, the presentation just flashed up logos for a whole host of other programs. ARPAN, Club Energy, Orja, Roshni, Dreamitra, Evidya.
A lot of different names.
Yeah, it really shows the breadth of their activities, different themes, different targets.
And are they partnering much generally on CSR with government or NGOs?
Seems so. They listed partnerships with government bodies, CAI, IUCN again, SNEHA, NGO, ICICI Foundation, Godrej. Quite a list. Shows a collaborative approach.
And geographically, how wide is their reach with these programs?
Pretty vast. The presentation mentioned a footprint across 18 states over 110 districts.
Wow.
And a specific focus on 19 aspirational districts, those areas the government targets for focused development.
Right, so really integrated across the country, addressing needs in diverse regions.
Yeah, that's the picture it paints. Deep integration and commitment to development challenges.
Okay, so we've covered financials, ESG, community work. How is all this governed? What's the structure ensuring responsible operation?
Good question. They emphasize a robust governance structure, as you'd expect. Starts with the board of directors, of course.
And various committees?
Exactly. Audit committee, nomination and remuneration, stakeholders relationship, CSR and sustainability, risk management. The usual key committees for oversight in a large company.
Standard, but essential. And policies.
Yep, they list key ones. The Tata Code of Conduct is obviously central. Then a whistleblower policy, a risk management policy, which they note is ISO certified,
Okay.
and their CSR policy. These provide the rule book, essentially.
And did they mention an overarching philosophy or principle?
They did. They talk about leadership with care.
Leadership with care.
Yeah, framing it as encompassing responsibilities towards the environment, shareholders, customers, community, and their own employees. So trying to tie it all together.
Right, covering all the main stakeholder groups explicitly.
And they also showed a tiered structure for pushing sustainability through the organization, from a board committee right down to specific sustainability SBOCs, single points of contact in different departments.
SBOCs. Interesting. So trying to embed it at different levels, not just top down.
Seems to be the idea, yeah. Integrating it into decision-making and operations.
Okay, so governance seems well structured. Now let's maybe zoom out again. What about the bigger picture? The energy industry context in India and Tata Power's future outlook.
Right. The presentation gives some useful context. For instance, overall power demand in India was up 4.2% year-on-year in FY25.
4.2%. That's solid growth. Shows the need for more energy.
Definitely. And they also point out that India's per capita power consumption is still quite low compared to developed countries.
Meaning there's likely still a lot of room for demand to grow in the future.
Exactly. Huge potential. They also briefly mentioned trends in coal plant load factors, PLF, and also that some older thermal capacity is being decommissioned.
Which fits with a global shift towards cleaner energy, I suppose.
It does. And speaking of cleaner energy, they highlighted the PM Surya Ghar Yojana, the rooftop solar scheme.
Yes, PMSGY. Big government push there.
Right. They outlined the financial assistance structure from the government for homeowners putting up solar panels, shows they're aligning with that policy.
Makes sense. Any major new projects mentioned? Generation side?
Yes, a big one, actually. The Korlachu hydropower project. It's under construction in Bhutan.
Bhutan, okay. How big?
600 megawatts capacity. And it's a significant investment, 6,900 crore rupees. Tata Power has a 40% stake.
And when's that due?
Expected commissioning is September 2029, so a long-term clean energy investment and one outside India, too.
Interesting. What about transmission? Getting the power where it needs to go?
Also covered. Several key transmission projects are under construction, expected to come online in CY25 and later.
Like which ones?
Names like Aerosex Transmission, Paradeep Transmission, Rajasthan Phase CV Part C, they listed the circuit kilometers and Tata Power's stake in each. It underlines they're investing heavily in strengthening the grid.
That's critical infrastructure for sure. Any mention of the distribution side? The discoms. Always a tricky area.
There was. They mentioned that overdue payments from discoms have reduced somewhat.
Oh, really? Why?
Thanks to government schemes like RDSS, the revamped distribution sector scheme, and also the late payment surcharge rules.
So, some improvement there. But are the underlying issues fixed?
Well, the presentation did acknowledge that major concerns remain in the distribution sector, so progress, but still challenges.
Right. That sector is vital. What about EVs? They're big in charging, right?
Very much so. They showcase the growth of their easy charge network, public chargers, home chargers, even bus charging points. Significant growth from FY21 to FY25.
And they mentioned rationalization of chargers in FY25. What's that about?
Likely means they're strategically adjusting where chargers are located, maybe removing underused ones, focusing deployment based on data and demand, fine-tuning the network.
Okay. And smart meters, any update there?
Yeah, quite a big number installed. Around 447,540 smart meters as of March 2025.
That's a lot. Moving towards a smarter grid.
It definitely helps with efficiency, billing, giving consumers more data. They also gave a quick performance update on their Mumbai T&D business and the Odisha Discoms, TPDDL.
Okay. Anything else on timelines for these projects?
Just a final point that they expect 2/3 of the transmission projects currently under construction to be commissioned in calendar year 2025.
2/3 in CY25. So a significant chunk of that new transmission capacity is coming online quite soon.
Seems like it. A near-term focus on getting that grid infrastructure built out.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive then, it feels like this presentation really shows Tata Power as, well, much more than just an electricity company.
I'd agree. You see the consistent financial growth, yes, but also this really tangible, evolving commitment to ESG.
Right, the ratings improvements, the biodiversity work.
And the community initiatives seem quite extensive and targeted, plus the governance structure holding it all together.
And then looking forward, a clear strategy focused on building future energy infrastructure, renewables, transmission, EV charging, both in India and even beyond, like that hydro project in Bhutan.
It really gives you a a comprehensive view of how a major energy player operates today. It's not just about keeping the lights on anymore.
No, it's this whole ecosystem, environmental responsibility, social impact, strategic investments for the future.
Exactly.
So here's maybe the final thought to leave you with. When you see all these different pieces, the money, the green initiatives, the community support, the future tech,
Uh-huh.
what role do companies like Tata Power, these big energy players, really play in shaping, a future that's not just powered, but also sustainable and fair for everyone?
That's a big question.
It is. Definitely gives you something to think about and maybe encourages you to look deeper into their reports, what they're actually doing on the ground.